Ask 10 preppers what SHTF means, and you might get 10 different answers. For one person, SHTF means a week-long power outage after a winter storm. For someone else, it means empty shelves, fuel shortages, and emergency services stretched thin. For others, it means the kind of long-term collapse that changes everything. So, which one is right? The honest answer is that SHTF is not one single event. It is a range of situations where normal life stops working the way people expect. Welcome to Prepper's Paradigm, your channel dedicated to practical prepping and disaster preparedness. As always, I use a computer-generated voice because my own voice is hard to understand due to an injury. Today, we're talking about what SHTF really means, why preppers use the term so often, and why it does not always mean the end of the world. That matters, because the way you define SHTF affects the way you prepare for it. If you think SHTF only means total collapse, you may overlook the smaller emergencies that are far more likely to affect your life. If you think only in terms of short-term disruptions, you may miss the bigger risks that deserve at least some planning. A realistic approach sits somewhere between those two extremes. SHTF can mean different things to different people. It can be personal, local, regional, national, or even global. The key question is not whether the label sounds dramatic. The key question is what systems stop working, how long they stay down, and what you need to do when they do. SHTF is shorthand for the phrase, shit hits the fan, which preppers use to describe situations where normal systems stop functioning properly. That can include power outages, severe storms, supply shortages, civil unrest, economic instability, cyber attacks, pandemic, wars, large-scale infrastructure failures, and more. The important thing to understand is that the term means different things depending on who you ask. Some people use SHTF to describe relatively small emergencies that only last a few days. Others use it for major national or global disasters that could last months or even years. That difference sometimes causes confusion, especially for people newer to preparedness. Online discussions often jump straight to extreme collapse scenarios. Movies and TV shows do the same thing. They show instant chaos, abandoned cities, and society collapsing overnight. Real life usually looks very different. In many real emergencies, systems fail unevenly. One area may lose power while another stays mostly normal. Stores may empty slowly rather than instantly. Communication may become unreliable without disappearing completely. Even a relatively small disruption can still create serious problems if people are unprepared. A week without electricity during winter temperatures can become dangerous very quickly. A fuel shortage can affect transportation, deliveries, and grocery supplies. A cyber attack can disrupt banking systems, communication networks, and supply chains without a single shot being fired. That wider definition is important because many people have already experienced what preppers would call small-scale SHTF events without ever using the term themselves. That is probably the most realistic way to think about it. SHTF is less about a single Hollywood collapse moment and more about situations where the systems people rely on suddenly become unreliable. When people hear SHTF, many jump straight to national collapse. But a lot of real SHTF situations are much smaller than that. They may affect one household, one town, one city, or one region. That does not make them harmless. A house fire can become a personal SHTF event. A wildfire evacuation can turn normal life upside down in minutes. A winter storm can knock out power, close roads, and cut off access to supplies. A local water contamination alert can suddenly make every tap in the house unreliable. A short fuel shortage can affect work, school runs, supply deliveries, and medical appointments. These events may not change the world, but they can change everything for the people caught inside them. That is why small-scale SHTF events deserve serious attention. They happen far more often than full collapse scenarios, and they expose weak points very quickly. Do you have enough water if the local supply becomes unsafe? Can you heat your home if the power goes out in winter? Can you cook without electricity? Can you contact family if cell service becomes unreliable? Can you get through a week without visiting a store? Those questions matter because small events often create the same basic problems as larger ones. The scale changes, but the needs stay familiar. Water, food, shelter, heat, light, medical supplies, communication, a way to stay calm and make sensible decisions. Small-scale SHTF events also teach one of the most important preparedness lessons. Waiting until the emergency starts usually means waiting too long. By the time people realize there is a problem, shelves may already be empty, fuel lines may already be long, and roads may already be blocked. That does not mean people need to panic. It means they need to prepare before normal systems come under pressure. Large-scale SHTF is the version that gets the most attention. This is where people start thinking about nationwide blackouts, economic collapse, major wars, pandemics, cyber attacks, EMP scenarios, or long-term supply chain failure. These events may happen less often than storms and local outages, but their impact can reach much further. The real danger comes from cascading failures. A grid failure does not only mean the lights go out. It can affect water treatment, fuel distribution, banking, refrigeration, hospitals, traffic control, communication, and food deliveries. A major cyber attack can create similar problems without physical damage. An economic crisis can affect jobs, prices, savings, supplies, and public confidence. A pandemic can disrupt work, healthcare, schools, travel, and supply chains. Large-scale SHTF also changes the timeline. A short outage may require a few days of supplies. A long disruption may require weeks or months of food, water plans, medical supplies, security awareness, and backup systems. That is where layered preparedness becomes important. Start with what helps during common emergencies. Then build toward longer disruptions over time. Stored water, shelf-stable food, backup lighting, radio communication, first aid supplies, sanitation plans, and emergency cash all help across many different scenarios. Large-scale SHTF does not require fantasy thinking. It requires understanding how connected modern systems really are. When one major system fails, others can follow. A lot of misconceptions around SHTF come from movies, social media, and entertainment-focused prepper content. Some of it makes for good drama. Some of it creates completely unrealistic expectations. One of the biggest myths is the idea that society instantly collapses into chaos the moment something goes wrong. Real emergencies usually unfold much more slowly and unevenly than that. Some areas may lose power while others stay operational. Some stores may run out of supplies while others remain open. Emergency services may become overwhelmed, but they often continue functioning in limited ways. Another common misconception is that everybody immediately becomes violent. That can happen in certain situations, especially during prolonged instability. But many real disasters also show people helping neighbors, sharing information, clearing roads, checking on relatives, and adapting together. Preparedness should include security awareness, but realistic prepping should also stay grounded in how people actually behave during emergencies. Another mistake is assuming that survival always means bugging out into the wilderness. In reality, most people survive disasters by staying home whenever conditions remain safe enough to do so. Homes provide shelter, supplies, sanitation, familiarity, and protection from the weather. Leaving all of that behind creates its own risks. That does not mean bugging out is never necessary. Wildfires, flooding, hurricanes, chemical spills, or civil unrest may force evacuation. But bugging out usually means temporarily relocating to a safer area, not disappearing into the woods forever with a backpack. There is also a misconception that preparedness requires massive amounts of money. Social media often focuses on expensive gear, underground bunkers, and huge stockpiles. The basics matter far more: water storage, food, medical supplies, flashlights, backup cooking, emergency plans, useful skills. Those simple preparations solve most real-world problems people face during emergencies. And finally, some people treat SHTF as an all-or-nothing event. Either nothing happens, or society completely collapses. Real life sits somewhere in the middle most of the time. Systems fail partially. Services become unreliable. Supplies become harder to obtain. Normal life becomes difficult, expensive, stressful, or unpredictable. That middle ground is exactly where practical preparedness becomes valuable. A lot of prepper discussions focus on trying to predict the next major disaster, but preparedness is usually more useful when it focuses on reducing risk instead. Nobody knows exactly what the future looks like. The next emergency could be a storm, a blackout, a cyber attack, an economic crisis, a wildfire evacuation, or something completely unexpected. What matters is building enough resilience to handle disruption when it happens. That is really what SHTF preparation comes down to. Not fear, not fantasy scenarios, not trying to predict the exact date society collapses. It is about understanding that modern life depends heavily on systems that can fail under pressure. Electricity, communication, transportation, supply chains, banking, water systems, food distribution. When those systems stop working properly, even temporarily, daily life can become difficult very quickly. Preparedness helps reduce that pressure. Extra food buys time. Stored water provides security. Backup power keeps essential equipment running. Emergency plans reduce confusion. Skills increase confidence. And all of those things remain useful across a wide range of situations. That is why many experienced preppers focus less on dramatic labels and more on practical readiness. Because whether someone calls it SHTF, disaster preparedness, emergency planning, or self-reliance, the core idea stays the same. Prepare before you need to. If you found this video useful, please consider liking, subscribing, and checking out the Prepper's Paradigm website for more practical preparedness guides and resources. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Stay prepared.